It's February 12th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment trial. The seventh hearing on Tuesday focused on whether Yoon adhered to or skipped former procedures to trigger the December martial law order. The final hearing is scheduled for Thursday, with the court likely to summon more witnesses and extended trial dates. U.S. President Donald Trump further pushed his plans to take over the Gaza Strip and move its residents to Jordan and other Arab nations during talks with Jordanian King Abdullah II. And the reciprocal tariffs by Trump are on the way, on top of the 25% tariff on steel and aluminum imports, with questions on whether countries that have free trade agreements with the U.S., like South Korea, will be affected. Was the martial law on December 3rd last year legally proclaimed? That was the key question at President Yoon's seventh impeachment trial hearing on Tuesday. Our Oh Soo-young starts us off.
President Yoon Suk-yeol's martial law was ill-advised but lawfully proclaimed, according to officials who were present at his office on the night of December 3rd. This came at Yoon's seventh impeachment trial hearing as more witnesses were summoned on Tuesday, amid claims by some senior cabinet ministers that Yoon had bypassed the cabinet procedures required by the Constitution before declaring the decree. Former Interior Minister Lee Sang-min said otherwise. While admitting a cabinet meeting hadn't been called in advance, he said the 7 or so members who initially gathered at the president's office waited for the 11-member quorum to be filled, after which Yoon spoke briefly before proclaiming martial law on live TV. Lee said he believes those present considered themselves at a cabinet meeting. National Security Advisor Shin Won-sik also said he was told by the president's chief of staff that a cabinet meeting was ongoing when he later arrived at the scene. Both Lee and Shin said while they, along with other ministers and secretaries, tried to dissuade the president from declaring martial law, they understood the political context of the situation. On this, Yoon took the chance to speak, reiterating his claim that the opposition Democratic Party has sabotaged the administration with a series of impeachments and a major budget cut.
제가 대통령으로서 야당이 아무리 저를 공격하더라도 왜 대화와 타협을 안 하겠습니다. 야당을 설득해서 뭐를 해보려고 한 건데 이 문명국가에서 도대체 현대사에서 볼 수 없는 이런 줄타내기라고 하는 것은 이거는 대단히 악의적인 거고 이거는 대화 타협을 하겠다는 것이 아니라 그냥 이 정권을 파괴시키는 것이 우리의 목표라고 하는 것을 명확히 보여주는 겁니다.
The hearing also addressed the election fraud allegations raised by Yoon as a pretext for declaring martial law. Former intelligence official Baek Jong-wook said the National Election Commission servers, upon inspection, seemed highly vulnerable to external attack and could potentially trigger a social crisis. But he wouldn't comment on election fraud, saying the servers hadn't been examined for such irregularities. Secretary General of the Election Commission Kim Yong-bin said he hadn't been made aware of the false voting ballots mentioned by Yoon's legal team and insisted regular inspections were conducted.
Given the conflicting narratives and discrepancies with previous statements, experts say the court is likely to summon more witnesses, inevitably extending the trial. While the court is focused on delivering a speedy verdict, the president's lawyers have continued to raise objections to the trial proceedings.
Yoon himself opposed the court's decision to accept investigation records as evidence, arguing it is crucial to hear out witness statements in person. However, the opposition has called for a quick end to the trial, saying the evidence is out there.
Our patience is wearing thin. How much longer must we put up with the baseless conspiracy theories about election fraud? There's already been enough consideration given to the respondent through this week's witness examination. We hope for a swift conclusion to the proceedings.
The court on Tuesday rejected Yoon's request to summon Prime Minister Han Duck-soo as a witness, deeming it unnecessary. The next and final hearing for now is scheduled for Thursday with 3 witnesses to testify. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
U.S. President Donald Trump reiterated his plan to take over the Gaza Strip, this time to King Abdullah II. As Trump pressured Jordan to accept refugees from Gaza, the Jordanian king offered to take in 2,000 sick Palestinian children. Lee Seung-jae reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump held talks with King Abdullah II of Jordan at the White House on Tuesday, where Trump reiterated his plan to take over and develop the Gaza Strip. As the two leaders discussed ending the Israel-Hamas war, Trump also pressured Jordan to take in Palestinian refugees. This comes as Trump suggested Monday that he would withhold U.S. funding from Jordan and Egypt to persuade the Middle Eastern countries to accept Palestinians from Gaza. While King Abdullah II did not say Jordan would be accepting the Palestinian refugees, he offered to take in 2,000 sick Palestinian children.
I think one of the things that we can do right away is take 2,000 children that are either cancer children or in a very ill state to Jordan as quickly as possible, and then wait for, I think, the Egyptians to present their plan on how we can work with the president to work on the Gaza challenges.
Trump showed appreciation for what he called a beautiful gesture, adding that Jordan, along with Egypt, will see great progress moving forward.
What you just said, 2,000 children with cancer or other problems, and that's really a beautiful gesture. That's really good, and we appreciate it. And we'll be working on the rest with Egypt. I think you're going to see some great progress. I think with Jordan, you're going to see some great progress. Three of us, and we'll have some others helping, and we're going to have some others at a very high level helping, and the whole thing will come.
While the Jordanian king did not agree to take in the displaced Gazans during their talks, Trump said both Jordan and Egypt would ultimately agree to house the refugees. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The Gaza ceasefire deal has been called into question, with Hamas accusing Israel of violating their truce. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is now threatening to resume the war. Let's turn to Professor Robert Lawrence for more. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you for having me.
So Hamas pointing to Israel for its violation of key provisions of the agreement. But doesn't Israel have its own suspicions about the rationale behind Hamas's delay?
Yes. Well, on Monday, Abu Ubaida, the spokesperson for the Qassam brigades, the armed wing of Hamas, said that it was going to release the delay of hostages planned for Saturday until further notice due to Israeli non-compliance with the terms of the agreement. Hamas is arguing that the delay, they're delaying the displaced persons back into northern Gaza, and that those people are being fired upon by shells and gunfire when they're going. And they're also arguing that Israel is not allowing relief trucks to come in to the Gaza Strip, while they're saying that Hamas has fulfilled all of its duties under its obligations. So Israel denies this. Israel says that, or they likely see some ulterior motives here. Firstly, a Hamas delegation led by Mohammed Darwish went to Tehran over the weekend and met with Ayatollah Khomeini, President Pezeshkian, and the parliament speaker Ghalibaf. So right after they got back is when this announcement was made. So a lot of Israelis are suspecting Iranian involvement. Secondly, Israel recognizes that Hamas has a decreasing leverage as it continues to return hostages, especially the female hostages. So it's likely trying to hurry Israel to the negotiating table for phase 2 while they still have some leverage. It is important to note that Hamas made this announcement 5 days prior to the Saturday deadline.
Right.
So I don't think that they're trying to kill the deal. If they wanted to kill the deal, they could have just not shown up or not delivered on Saturday.
Well, Israel is determined to take actions. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu now threatening to end the deal unless Hamas really lets go of those captives by this weekend. Do you think he'll actually do that?
It's tough to say. There's a chorus of voices coming out of Israel right now. Former Minister of National Security Ben-Gvir and the Finance Minister Smotrich they're looking for kind of a fire and brimstone type reaction, all-out war. Opposition leader Lapid, along with the family members of the hostages, want the hostages returned, with the utmost priority and the utmost urgency. So Netanyahu is on the hot seat again. As far as I know, as of this morning, I believe that the Israeli cabinet unanimously passed a decision to reinstate full warfare if the hostages aren't returned by noon. So, I think as far as what will actually happen, it's probably best not to get ahead of ourselves. We'll wait to see if calmer minds prevail and if some better negotiation can happen. It's not inevitable, but certainly if the hostages aren't returned by noon, I think it's very likely that a resumption and an escalation of fighting will ensue.
Okay, well, Trump also had to comment on this. Now, he said Israel should cancel the ceasefire and that all hell is going to break out. What do you think he meant by this?
Yeah, well, in the press conference with the King of Jordan earlier this morning, he was directly asked about what this meant, and he was very intentionally vague. He seemed particularly irritated by the condition of the three hostages that were released last week, and he implied that patience is running out with this. The implication of this type of rhetoric, I think, is the same as since he had been elected to office. He's differentiating his approach from the previous administrations. So when the Biden administration, often publicly called for restraint, Trump's all bets are off type warning is implying that the misery in the Gaza Strip will deteriorate into something worse if Hamas doesn't adhere to the plan. So the obvious assumption is that this would come in the form of an escalation in kinetic warfare on Hamas. However, before he came into office, he did talk about, hell breaking loose all over the Middle East. So it'll be interesting to see if things don't go well on Saturday, what the scope of this reaction will be. He might have different targets in mind, like axis of resistance forces in the region.
Well, some analysts point out that Trump's call for ethnic cleansing in Gaza is front and center in the ceasefire agreement breakdown. I'd like to hear your take on this.
Well, Hamas didn't directly blame the president's plan for the Gaza Strip for the delay. But senior Hamas officials, one particular named Sami Abu Zuri, implied as much when he said that Trump has to remember that threatening language has no value and it only complicates the matter. Certainly a lot of Palestinians did not care for this proposal very much. I mean, I don't think it's going to be very popular in the Gazan street. But, time will tell with that. It's still difficult to ascertain exactly what Trump's plan is. He said there would be no need for boots on the ground, but then, any significant U.S. presence in the Gaza Strip is going to be a big target. He said he would buy it. Then he said there was nothing to buy. His cabinet member said that it would be a temporary relocation. And then he said that Palestinians won't be able to return. So there are a lot of details that need to be clarified. Anybody watching him can see that his rhetoric, especially in the beginning of a negotiation, doesn't always match his intention.
Right.
I think he's probably trying to move the goalposts and get regional actors to take a bigger stake in the conflict and try to avoid, a repetition of the cycle of violence, So I think this transactional approach doesn't sit well with a lot of people in international relations. But I think it's more likely a negotiation strategy than an actual policy initiative. The reality of actually having an American takeover of the Gaza Strip seems a bridge too far. But he's a tough guy to predict, so we'll see.
Well, lots of things are still up in the air, and I know we have to wait until the weekend to see what happens. But would you say Hamas may be wondering if it's even worth engaging in phase 2 of the ceasefire talks?
Well, I think Hamas wants to get back as many of their people as they can, and they want to try to secure a permanent ceasefire in phase 2. However, Israel and the U.S. have both continued to insist that Hamas won't be able to rule the Gaza Strip after the conflict. So obviously Hamas is probably concerned about the sincerity of negotiating with both the Americans and the Israelis. This is kind of an existential threat for Hamas. So their best move, I think that the hostages are their best leverage right now. So they want to use those and try to get Israel to return to negotiations on phase 2 as quick as possible. So, they're encountering diminishing returns on as the number of hostages lessen. and that fanfare that they had, with the hostage release kind of rallies is losing momentum. So they want to implement phase 2, but they want to do it quickly, cautiously, and with guarantees. And I'm assuming that they'll do so with contingency plans for if everything falls through and military conflict resumes.
Alrighty, Professor Lawrence, thank you so much for joining us this morning. You have a wonderful day.
My pleasure. You too. Bye-bye.
On top of the 25% steel and aluminum tariffs, the U.S. is set to issue reciprocal tariffs, with its leader claiming it's an effort to create fairer trade conditions. Our Choi Min-jung has more.
The U.S. is anticipated to announce plans to impose reciprocal tariffs on other countries as early as Tuesday or by Wednesday at the latest.
I'll be announcing probably Tuesday or Wednesday at a news conference reciprocal tariffs, and very simply, it's if they charge us, we charge them.
Trump claims that introducing reciprocal tariffs will create a fairer trading environment for the U.S. In theory, the U.S. would apply identical levies on imports from a specific country that the country imposes on American exports. Pundits say one of the most significant countries impacted by reciprocal tariffs would be India. In 2022, India imposed an average tariff of 9.5% on American products, significantly higher than the 3% rate the U.S. imposed on Indian goods. Europe will also likely face reciprocal tariffs. The U.S. imposes a 2.5% tariff on cars from BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and Volkswagen, while the EU charges 10% on American auto imports. On top of that, there's the question of how Trump will handle value-added tax in the EU, which averages at over 20%.
Well, the European Union charges us 20% plus a VAT tax, called a VAT tax, very similar, and it costs us an absolute fortune. We are treated so badly.
If Trump takes a country-level approach, countries with which the U.S. has free trade agreements, including South Korea, are likely to remain unaffected, as most products are tariff-free. However, given that South Korea posted a record trade surplus with the U.S. last year, there's a possibility that President Trump could target this issue. Nonetheless, the White House has indicated that reciprocal tariffs may not be implemented immediately this week, as Trump focuses on reviewing existing tariffs. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Now, in the meantime, there's just a month left before Trump's 25% tariffs come into force. And South Korea is looking to make a breakthrough by pushing for last-minute talks with the U.S. Our Kim Jong-sil has the details.
The South Korean government is on high alert as the U.S. moves forward with a 25% tariff on imported steel and aluminum, a move that could hit key industries hard. Following the U.S. announcement, top officials in Seoul met on Tuesday to discuss response measures.
While we are concerned about the decline in profitability for our industry, we also see opportunities in a fair, competitive environment. We will work closely with the industry to strengthen its competitiveness.
The government said it will also push for last-minute negotiations.
With some time left until March 12th, we will actively engage in negotiations with the US to ensure our interests are fully reflected.
South Korea had previously faced export limits instead of tariffs, but with the new policy, those restrictions will also be lifted on March 12th.
From calculations done in a report by an analyst in Citibank, this should affect Korea's GDP, reduce Korea's GDP by 0.1 to 0.2%. But because the quota has been removed, the damage from tariffs should be less than 0.2% of the GDP.
With Trump hinting at tariffs on autos and semiconductors, experts warn negotiations must be strategic.
Because Trump has threatened many other tariffs on other goods such as automobiles and pharmaceuticals, for full negotiation, we should wait until we know exactly what range of goods that U.S. will put tariffs on.
Officials say they will closely monitor U.S. trade moves and coordinate responses with Japan and the EU. With time running out, South Korea faces tough choices to protect its export-driven economy. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
U.S. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell has stated that the central bank is not rushing to lower interest rates, describing the economy as strong. Powell told lawmakers on Monday that the U.S. economy is strong overall and has made significant progress over the past 2 years, particularly in labor market conditions. He added that while inflation has moved closer to the Fed's 2% target, it remains somewhat elevated. He cautioned against reducing policy restraints too quickly, as doing so could increase the demand and push prices higher, reversing progress on inflation. Now, subtly referencing the Trump administration's latest import taxes, Powell said the Fed's policy is well positioned to deal with the risks and uncertainties facing the U.S. South Korea added 5 medals at the 2025 Winter Asian Games in Harbin on Tuesday, including its first ever gold medal in biathlon. Yekaterina Abakumova, a Russian-born biathlete who became a naturalized South Korean in 2017, finished first in the women's 7.5-kilometer biathlon sprint event, giving Team Korea their 12th gold medal overall. The top podium finish marks the first time a South Korean has won a Winter Asian Games gold in the sport. South Korea also finished with 2 silver and 2 bronze in speed skating on the day, with Lee Na-hyun winning her 4th medal in Harbin. On Wednesday, the women's figure skating event kicks off with its short program, with the South Korean women's curling team looking to continue its success, this time against the Philippines. South Korea is second in the medal standings with 12 gold, 12 silver, and 11 bronze for a total of 35 medals.
Good morning, I'm Choi Ji-hee, and this is The World Now. At the recent AI Action Summit in Paris, the United States and the United Kingdom declined to sign a declaration aimed at promoting open and inclusive artificial intelligence, setting them apart from 60 other nations. On Tuesday, the U.S. and the UK chose not to join the list of signatories of the Statement on Inclusive and Sustainable Artificial Intelligence. The statement had received support from countries including France, China, and India. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance expressed concerns that strict regulations might hinder innovation, stressing the nation's preference for pro-growth AI policies. The UK government cited concerns about national security and global governance as the reasons for not signing the declaration. Contrastingly, French President Emmanuel Macron said, "We need these rules for AI to move forward." OpenAI CEO Sam Altman says he has rejected Elon Musk's offer to acquire the firm behind ChatGPT, intensifying the ongoing rift between the two figures. On Tuesday, a consortium of investors led by Elon Musk proposed to buy the nonprofit that runs OpenAI for approximately $97.4 billion in an attempt to take control of its research and strategic decisions. However, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman declined the offer, saying it was ridiculous and that it was not for sale. Instead, he suggested buying the social platform X, which is owned by Musk. Musk, who co-founded OpenAI in 2015, left the organization in 2018 and has since been highly critical of its direction. His ongoing legal battle with OpenAI claims that the company abandoned its founding mission by partnering with Microsoft and is shifting toward a for-profit model. Now to the U.S. state of Arizona, where one person died and at least 3 others were injured on Monday afternoon local time when a private jet collided with another aircraft. The private jet, owned by Vince Neil, the lead singer of rock band Motley Crue, collided with a parked plane as it was landing at Scottsdale Municipal Airport. The arriving jet reportedly veered off the runway before crashing. 2 pilots and 2 passengers were on board Neil's jet, and 1 person was in the parked jet. 3 people were taken to hospital for treatment. Neil was not on the plane. Finally, to Iraq, where the country's foreign minister on Tuesday announced the successful recovery of Iraqi artifacts from Japan and Switzerland. Speaking at the Iraqi National Museum, the minister said the historic items, including a statue of the sun god, rare murals, and some textured paintings, date back to ancient Mesopotamia and the Assyrian civilization. He said that some of the recovered artifacts had been loaned to Japan in the 1970s, adding that the returned items are not just objects, but integral parts of Iraq's national identity. Iraq's government has been using diplomatic channels to recover items stolen during years of conflict in the country.
Yesterday's weather was such a treat after all the bitter chill. But today we're having another round of wintry weather. A mix of rain and snow is expected in much of the country. Central regions could see up to 8 centimeters of snowfall, mainly in the morning. Parts of Chungcheongbuk-do and Gyeongsang-Pukdo provinces could see 3 to 8 centimeters of snow throughout the day today. Now, southern provinces could see rain due to milder temperatures. Gyeongsang-Namdo and Jeollanam-do province could see 30 to 40 millimeters of rainfall. It's Daeboreum today, when we can see the first full moon of the new year under the lunar calendar. The moon rises at 5:46 p.m. and should be at its brightest at 10:53 here in Seoul. But checking out the full moon might not be easy due to cloudy skies. Meanwhile, highs in Seoul will be at 4, Busan at 12 degrees Celsius. Today's wet weather will not drop temperatures any further. In fact, we could have spring-like warmth from Friday, but it's messy out there today. Stay safe.
That is all we have for this morning. New Day at Arirang will be back tomorrow at the same time, 10 a.m. Korea time. Until then, goodbye.